Sean, take us back to what first inspired you to become so passionate about conservation and sustainable growth.
Great question. It goes back to my probably as a child. So I grew up in scouting in Central Florida, Boy Scouts all the way through becoming an Eagle Scout. In scouting, we were doing something every month. We were camping every month, hiking every month, doing something outdoors. Even in the Florida heat, so there was pretty much year round we were doing something outdoors. Also, growing up, I attribute a lot of my passion and advocacy and love of the outdoors and the importance of conservation and the historical aspects to our great state here in Florida, to my grandparents. On my mom's side, my grandparents owned a lot of property, upwards of about 700 acres near Willaca, Palatka, Florida. So growing up as a kid, we were always up there too. They had row crops on part of this property, lakes, ponds that we would fish in. Even did a little bit of silviculture, harvesting of trees. So really developed an appreciation for both our natural resources and agricultural resources from my grandparents. On my dad's side, we were also always doing something, driving around the state, looking at, historical markers, going to historical places of importance, state parks with my grandparents on my dad's side. So at an early age, I just really had that appreciation kind of built in, and I attribute a lot of that to how I was raised.
So you were raised in Central Florida?
Yeah, so I'm one of those Central Florida natives. Grew up right here in Seminole County, but live in Lake County now, of course. Was born in downtown Orlando. ORMC used to be called Orange Memorial Hospital, and was born there. Grew up in Seminole County. My wife and I moved to Lake County in 1998.
Okay, so you are our Lake County Commissioner.
Yes.
What got you motivated to get into local government?
Another good question. I get that often. If you asked those that I went to high school with, they would probably they would have laughed if they had said at the time, "Yeah, Sean Parks will be involved in politics." And I wasn't really expecting that at the time, or even obviously knowing or thinking that I'd be a county commissioner. Although I did run for class secretary, and I think I got second place my senior year, but that was probably the only extent of politics at that point in my life. So I actually got involved right after 9/11, and really wanted to just get engaged with public service. I thought about going into the military actually at the time. I was right at that age limit where you could go into the Air Force, for instance. We were pregnant, my wife and Ivy and I, we were pregnant with Reagan, our first born daughter, and she said, "No, I don't think so. I don't think you should go into the military. So this wouldn't be a good time." And I totally agreed, of course. So I just started, in essence, wanting to help our country, help our community, and really helping our country again by helping in your community. And that's a message that I tell people, that you don't necessarily have to do something grand. You can help right here in the community, and it be something that's just as grand and just as serving to the place that you live. So what I started doing, in essence, was I just started volunteering. It's kind of the short answer at that time. Wanted to serve somehow. Got on a local committee called the Pear Park Committee at the time. The Pear Park, which those in Lake County know Pear Park very well.
It's a beautiful park.
It's a beautiful park, yeah. It stands for Palatka Environmental and Agriculture Reserve Park, so it's kind of the best of both worlds there. Well, I was able to get on the committee where they were establishing the plan for the park, the master plan, and was able to participate as probably the youngest person on the committee at the time, about what went into the park. What kind of amenities do you want to see? What's the mission, the vision for the park? And so was able to participate in doing that. And there was a wonderful woman, Nadine Foley, who saw something in me, I guess, and she said, you know, I think you should be the chair of this committee. You're doing a great job. And she was very supportive and sort of helped me along in the leadership aspect of that and being involved in committees, local committees like that. And, you know, supported me in that aspect and then supported me in other committees because I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. I have an actual, you know, say-so. I'm having some input on the design of a park here, you know, a pretty big feature to this beautiful county that we just moved to a few years prior. And, you know, I'm seeing something good come out of this. This is actually pretty cool. We're gonna do this, and we're gonna have trails over here, and, you know, people are gonna come see this. So I was very inspired, and she saw that and was able to help me in other aspects, other committees around the county. And that's how it sort of blossomed from there, and was involved with the Lake County Water Authority in 2004. Was able to run for that as a candidate and won, and was able to serve on that board. And water resources is my background, as you know, part of my background at least. Had done a lot of work for an engineering firm related to water resources at the time, and was able to make a difference there as well. And then, as they say, of course, the rest is history. Really started getting involved more, and not just politically, but even with some nonprofits here locally as well.
But you got your start on a parks committee.
Yeah, exactly. That was my first local committee ever.
So is conservation, is that a Republican issue? Is that a Democratic issue? Where does it fall politically in Lake County?
Oh, I think it's politically, I hope it isn't just a red issue or just a blue issue. I think it isn't. I think it's universal.
Maybe tell people a little bit about Lake Forever and what transpired last November here in Lake County.
Well, so we had the opportunity to renew a bond for public lands acquisition, just like what was done in 2004. At that time, we had about 73% approval at that time for the bond. And that bond money was used to acquire some natural lands like Lake May Preserve.
Lake Hiawatha Park.
Lake Hiawatha Park is probably, thank you, that's probably the best example right there, because Lake Hiawatha Park was slated for development. It actually had, you know, platted homes planned for it. So everybody that's out there now, imagine that. It actually had platted homes. The property was purchased for preservation and also for construction of the trail that, I mean, geez, if you go out there now on any Saturday especially, you see how widely used that trail is. There's a kayak launch that's on Lake Mineola as well. Wetlands that are protected to the sort of the south and west of the trail is also. So you have a couple hundred acres there that's preserved. The trail, these amenities that are on the lake, incredibly great use of money, right? I mean, everybody's concerned about rapid growth. They were back then at the time. And actually, as an aside story to that, between 2002 and 2006, that very time frame that we're talking about for the first bond was probably, even by today's standards, the most rapid growth in Lake County. Although we're seeing some of those levels right now, obviously. So we were renewing that bond from 2004. We had to take it to the voters last year. And you know as well as I do, we knew that it was going to be successful. I think we were a little surprised at how successful it was, how much approval there was for renewing the bond for another 20 years. What it would do is $50 million. We would be able to go through, based on the advice of the committee that's now being set up, committee that is comprised of citizens that live here and business people that live in Lake County. And of course, I am glad to see that you are now officially on that committee, Tim. You're officially my appointment from District 2. Couldn't think of a better person. So the committee is going to be made up of people like you, each with a little bit of a different interest, but a background and perspective to come together and advise the county commission on how to use that $50 million over the next 20 years for funding of It could be land to purchase outright, or it could be purchase of development rights, purchase of lands that could be used for trails as well. So that committee is going to be working here very soon, and I'm very excited about what will happen. And once we start getting some applications in for some properties to preserve, then we'll move forward with the $50 million. The $50 million also does provide a great opportunity for us to match those dollars with the state. $50 million really isn't just $50 million. It could be more like 200, 150, 200, maybe even $300 million when you match that to grant money, grant opportunities that are coming from the state. It could be resiliency funds, could be Rural and Family Lands Protection Act money as well. It could be Florida Forever. When we put a part of that $50 million into the pot, so to speak, it's matched. Well, obviously those dollars grow, 3 to 1 or 5 to 1, and that's the advantage here. So you can tell by my talking about it here at length how big of a deal that was to renew that bond this past November. And again, to point out that it was passed by 80%. So 80% of the voters during a general election. Goes to your first question about is this a red or a blue issue? This was a general election, presidential general election, the highest voter turnout ever in Lake County, and 80% of the voters approved this referendum. It is one of the biggest messages that could have been received, I think, locally in many years.
It seemed to me that there's a real interest in these programs, but I didn't know how they were done. Mm-hmm. And so working alongside you, and then of course connecting with the Trust for Public Lands, who was such a huge support in getting this done in Lake County, was really eye-opening to see just the mechanics. First, I think the biggest hurdle was just getting it on the ballot in the first place, which required the vote of the county commission. Mm-hmm. I think that was our biggest hurdle, truly.
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point, and we were a little bit touch and go there, to be honest, and be real with the audience. Listening to this, we were touch and go for a little bit there. Well, will other commissioners do this? Will they see this as a tax increase and basically cut the discussion off there? There was a lot of debate about active versus passive recreation, if you remember that. And it's important to point out to anybody listening now, we wanted to make sure that the active recreation wasn't part of the ordinance, isn't part of this, because ballparks, outdoor sports facilities, although they are great and much needed, this was not to be part of that bill, because when you're focusing on conservation, it's very different. It's no impact, whereas active recreation, there's impacts associated with maintaining those facilities, chemicals, lighting, things like that, increased traffic and noise. With this use of money, this is purely environmental features that we're trying to protect. It could be water protection of our water resources, open space. It's not an active use. It could be lands maybe for a trail at some point for trail use, but it's not an active use. It wouldn't be something that would be detrimental. It's obviously a plus to preserve these lands. It gets them out of the arena, so to speak, of being potentially developed and into the public realm of quality of life, getting outdoors, enjoying the quiet, which is important these days to be reflective.
We need those kind of spaces.
Exactly.
The active recreation, the ball fields, they're important. I use our local tennis courts all the time. Very grateful that they're here. But passive recreation is equally important, because you want to be able to go out into beautiful protected spaces where you can be close to nature, where you can maybe see some eagles or maybe a bobcat, or just to be on a trail where you can kind of immerse yourself and experience the peace, the quiet, and so forth. And plus, those lands, when they're put into conservation and opened up for passive recreation, they continue to provide all of the ecosystem services that are really needed. So maybe share with our audience a little bit why these ecosystem services are so important to the county.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And yeah, so there's the obvious benefit of these lands and these natural land, these passive recreation areas being in the public realm for us to use, the quietness part of it, the enjoyment. Even if somebody's just concerned about, I don't want there to be houses next door, I see the benefit, and we got a lot of that too. The reasons why to support the amendment or the ballot issue. But the ecosystem services is at the heart of the matter, of course, because I mean, as you know, it's what has been I'm going to say a growing science, but it's a growing science and a growing effort to try to educate the public that our natural areas are more than just spaces that have nice looking trees and they're open space and they're not subdivisions, which is good. But they're providing, for instance, and these are the ecological services that we talk about. They're providing filtration, for instance, to the water protection. They're providing the diversity of wildlife that's on these properties. The pollinators, for instance, and if you don't know how important pollinators are, simply just to our food source, then you're kind of missing out on that. So the idea again is to try to, through education, to show that there's more value to these lands than just something nice to look at and know that there's not going to be subdivisions. So our water is dependent upon this. The pollinators, even air quality is improved when you have these forests that remain undeveloped or in use, even if it's a silviculture aspect part of it. All those ecological services are what we want to try to show people how important it is, and as I said earlier, the science and the science and art for people like you and me, and even the PhDs and the scientists that are really into this every day doing all the research is connecting a monetary value to that, showing people, okay, it's not just nice to have that to look at, that pretty 500 acre area that I know is not going to be houses, but it also is ensuring that I'm going to have an affordable food source for people that want to grow things locally here. Or it's going to be, in terms of dollars, it's going to protect my water so that I don't have to go have my city or my county go buy some expensive reverse osmosis treatment plant to treat water that's polluted, basically, because we urbanized everything. So it's kind of trying to connect the dollars to these ecological services is the important part of what we're doing, and we're getting there's people far smarter than me that are out there working hard to do this. And when more people see that, when there's a monetary aspect tied to these lands, then I think we're going to see even more
support.
More support, exactly.
We can get that other 20%.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, okay, basically, you want to eat and you want to clean water, then that's why we need our natural lands. You have to have the balance.
You have to have that. Well, they call it green infrastructure as well sometimes. And you think about if we didn't have all of the water filtration and the water recharge and also just the stormwater attenuation and capture that you get from
wetlands
and functional woodlands and green spaces. There's so much that these natural lands do that we would otherwise we'd have to build gray infrastructure, gray stormwater infrastructure, as you say, treatment plants or alternative water source projects to generate the type of clean water that we need for growth and development. Those costs can quickly turn into hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars for a county like Lake County.
Absolutely. The numbers are insane. I mean, we have a lot of concern, rightfully so, about the increasing costs of infrastructure. And when infrastructure, people think of roads, for instance. and roads are getting very expensive to build. But you've hit the nail on the head. Green infrastructure, we need to start thinking about that as well. And again, it's tied to the ecological services that are provided by having good green infrastructure. The cost to make sure that we are, properly supporting green infrastructure, although it might appear to be expensive in the short term, in the long run, just as you said, is going to far outweigh the cost long term. Reverse osmosis plants right now, so those are the special membrane filters that are used to treat water that's either saline or it has pollutants in it to make it pure. Those can be, a plant can be $400 million. So can you imagine our water resources in Lake County get to a point they're degraded enough where you have to build a reverse osmosis plant? And because maybe you weren't doing stormwater treatment the proper way and everything's too urbanized, and now you gotta go justify that expense to the constituents. No thank you for me. I don't want to be a part of that. I would rather focus on kind of what you were saying. Let's focus on the green infrastructure now. Although it might appear to be expensive, it's going to be a lot cheaper to do that than cleaning up. I guess, as they say, prevention is always cheaper than the solution to pollution.
An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah, I think that's the phrase. Correct. Yeah.
But it's scary because if you think about a future where a community like Lake County has to consider something like a reverse osmosis plant to clean and purify its water, I mean, how far gone are we at that point? Because the whole appeal of Lake County is its water. It's called Lake County for a reason. There's lakes everywhere. There's the Palatka River that runs through this county, and people have come to expect a certain quality of life, a certain quality of the environment that you can find here that you don't find in Orlando, for example.
Yes. Yeah.
Because of the urbanization, and there's not a lot of really beautiful open spaces left here. That's still the case. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking not of the $400 million cost for a reverse osmosis plant, but what is it cost to economic development and human health, and that you would then be facing at that time if your water is so degraded that you need a reverse osmosis plant.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I think you're also touching on a big subject here when it comes to business development, for instance, and the economic side of this. What we know from the generations that are growing up now is they're starting to become a lot more aware of these issues to pollution and overdevelopment and problems that can come along with improper planning. And quite frankly, when they choose a place to live, and that's, mark my words, this, I'm sure, but they're choosing the place they want to live. There's technology available now where people can work remotely too as well. So they're looking for a quality of life. They're looking for a place that's clean. They're looking for a place that has open spaces. And that might be quite literally the first place that they choose. It may not necessarily be some urban, super big city that we're thinking about that are popular, and they are still popular because they've got, a very urbanized, thriving, high-rise downtown. But there are a lot of people, especially now in Gen Z that are coming up, that do like the small town and the little downtown aspect, the little rural center, the little village centers and places like that. But they're choosing where they can get outdoors, where they can go swim in the lakes. Like we can still swim in these Claremont Channel lakes. They're outstanding Florida water bodies.
They're still clean.
They're still clean. We have, as you know, we have the triathlons that come here, and people from all over the place, not just around Central Florida, but from other states, other countries, come and they swim in our lakes. Can you imagine the economic impact if all of a sudden we get a reputation that these lakes are polluted? We haven't been treating the runoff. The other part of this is the very tough subject of talking about what to do with septic tanks and the conversion and getting either onto sewer or some advanced treatment. Very tough topic to deal with right now, but long term we have to address that. we have to address it for the long term, I should say. And because there will be an economic impact if we don't. People won't want to come here. Well, we truly will have become just another suburb to Orlando, and that will hurt us tremendously economically. People will go somewhere else. There's a lot of people that are moving to Florida in general, but they're moving around, and we don't talk about this either. But we have data that shows people are moving out now from other ultra urbanized areas of Florida to Lake County because they're trying to get away with some of the same issues that we're talking about here, and they're coming to Lake County.
Yeah, they're moving up from Southeast Florida, which has become so overdeveloped that you no longer have open space, no longer have quality of life, and what happens is people leave. And then when people leave, property values go down, tax bases go down, the employment base goes down, which is a detractor to new businesses.
Right.
So the whole economic development paradigm is affected. And when people think about, well, we have beautiful lakes and we have open space in Lake County, what's the worry? Well, the worry is that we could lose that. At the rate that it's developing, we have a lot of growth. I've been here my whole life, but I think and you probably know these numbers better than I, but I think just the city of Claremont, I think in 20 years, it's gone from like 9,000 people to 50,000 people.
Yeah, that's about right. Exactly. We're
That's
up to almost 50,000 or more now even.
5X.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, it's shocking, isn't it?
That's a huge, and it's occurred over a couple decades, but it's still happening. Like we are experiencing one of the most intense periods of growth in the history of the county. As you mentioned earlier, there was 2002 to 2006 during the last bubble. That was a big growth period, but right now it's almost as hot as then.
That's right. Yeah.
So you could lose the things that you talked about. The fact that we can go swimming in our lakes right now, we can lose that if we don't if we're not careful to steward our natural resources. And that's one of the reasons why just so thrilled to be talking to you and have you on this podcast, because that's what you've been fighting for as long as I've known you, and I really respect that and appreciate it.
Oh no, it's in my blood. I'm happy to do it again, but again, what you do, you and others too. There's others that are in sort of this fight with us, if you will. Don't use those terms often, but and of course Cherry Lake and your team. It's an honor. It's an honor to be in there. And we've got a lot of work to do. We've come a long way. It's been slow, and I understand people's frustrations. I get this a lot, and particularly right now, there's a focus on the traffic, and there's some reasons why it's particularly bad right now with traffic. But there is progress. There's progress that's been made. You know it, and I appreciate people like you that know like how far we've come. And some of these topics we couldn't even talk about publicly or at commission meetings or council meetings, just 6 to 8 years ago. And look how far we've come. But again, I'm in a role, and it's an honor to do it. But really, the people behind me, like you, are the ones that really are making the change. And I'm happy to be a part of it.
The next thing that's coming up on the County Commission's agenda is the Wellness Way Landscape Ordinance.
The Wellness Way Landscape Ordinance is centered around a lot of the work and data that you guys did. Being in the obvious situation of one of the highest locations, the top of the aquifer, as we call it, the Lake Wales Ridge in Central Florida, former orange groves. Before that, it was sandhill scrub habitat, very sandy soils, 20 inches of recharge perhaps in a lot of areas. Knowing that, okay, we know houses are coming. A lot of those farms were cut up after the freezes, and that's why we did the Wellness Way plan. There was entitlements handed out back in the late 80s, early 90s that gave landowners the entitlements for higher density development, because that's all the landowners had at the time. And government, city, county at that time, early 90s, gave higher density development because at least it made the land worth a little bit more to the poor person that lost everything in the freezes. And as I always say, the die was sort of cast for our situation at that point, because those entitlements are granted out in the Wellness Way area, as well as many places around South Lake County. And it's something you have to work with in the growth management system in Florida. It's a property rights state, which I say thankfully it is. But there's property rights entitled to these properties. So what we have to do, and what we try to do with Wellness Way, is, as I was told at the time, it could be the end of my political career if I even tried to touch the topic. But I guess stupidly, or maybe smartly, did so, and said we need to be proactive and avoid death by 1,000 cuts, and have landowners come in, and there was 29 or 36 different landowners at the time, and do 100 acres here, 50 acres over here, and the next thing you know, you have Lee High Acres on steroids, 30,000 homes, all on 1 acre lots or less. I guess it would be less. It's not 30,000 acres, but you'd have a lot of that urban or even rural sprawl, as they call it. So
was it about 15,000 acres?
It's about 15,500 acres total now. Yeah. So we sort of, to sum it up, we were concerned that you could have 25,000 units be built, because you have the city of Claremont coming in, 4 or 5 units to the acre. Then you'd have upwards of 25,000 units potentially being out there, all residential, by the way, if it was not planned. So we put the Wellness Way plan in place, where it requires the job centers, and although people don't see those now, it is a requirement, they have to. There's also 2,800 acres that's in open space through Conserve 2. On top of that, there's an open space requirement as well for any new development that comes in place. There's a trail network that's built, and then there's this landscape ordinance. The landscape ordinance is supposed to be unlike any other ordinance, any other requirement in Lake County at least. Very strict, very stringent, recognizing that the soils aren't going to support people endlessly watering St. Augustine lawns over and over again all over the place. Lush tropical landscapes that oftentimes people associate with Florida. The water resources aren't there to support that, to be quite frank. And if we go about as business as usual and don't prescribe what we need to have in terms of the landscape, the built environment then the result will be water use off the charts, to try to keep this irrigated. And it's hard to tell somebody when they put in tropical landscaping and sandhill on a sandhill habitat, you can only, and with St. Augustine, you can only water once or twice a week. It's just not going to cut it. And then you're going to have a lot of additional cost. And then we go back to what we talked about before. At some point, somebody down the road is going to have to pay a lot of money for an alternative water supply project to supply that water. So the landscape ordinance, and why it's very important, if you're listening to this, is you got to let all of us commissioners know you support the landscape ordinance for Wellness Way, because it requires use of native plants, appropriate plants. It requires the buffers. It requires a soil amendment, because as you know, and you were able to prove that when you construct and you clear land, it's a very sterile soil. And then how do you expect, especially in those kinds of soils, it's even worse. How do you expect those plants to survive or even thrive? And it's very hard, and it requires lots of water, extra fertilizers, and pest management needs to go into it, because the plants are constantly stressed. And really, if you don't understand or even care about all that, it's quite frankly, the landscape ordinance is required just so that we can meet the water requirements. It's a water issue. So we need this landscape ordinance to be adopted. It's coming up here. It would apply, in this case, only to the Wellness Way area, but it is something that has been planned from the beginning. The developers have known about this. Some don't like it. There's been some belly aching on and off through the years, but it's certainly not a surprise to them. Unfortunately, we're getting a little resistance now to it from some commissioners. And I think it's maybe there's just some non-understanding of the bigger picture that you and I talk about with the water supply, economic development tied to it as well, as to why there might be resistance.
Yeah, people don't like change, and I think there needs to be some education done here. But Wellness Way, like you say, the Lake Wales Ridge, the high hills of Claremont, it is the worst possible place in all of Florida to do conventional Florida landscaping.
Correct.
Because you can see the hills now, because with all of the development that's going on, when you drive through there, you can see all of the site being cleared, and you can just see just how deep the sand goes. Mm-hmm. So as soon as you apply irrigation water, it's just going to go straight down right through that sand.
Right.
And it's not going to get to the plants. So even though today, we know that 60 to 70% of residential water use is going to support landscapes, it's probably going to be even more at Wellness Way. We might be in a situation where it could be people using over 1,000 gallons of water a day to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where using the native plants and utilizing the compost amendments, those all help to alter that water use pattern of the landscape.
That's right.
And we're also out of water. Like the St. Johns River Water Management District is not issuing out any new consumptive use permit allocations for developments or utilities or anyone else who may need them without development orders that require conservation or alternative water source projects. And I'm pretty sure all the utilities in the city of Claremont are already at their capacity.
They're maxed, yeah.
They're maxed out. Mm-hmm. So where is the water going to come from? It's just not there. And the cost of alternative water source projects, I think the Central Florida Water Initiative recently put out a report where it said that close to $400 million has already been spent on alternative water source projects for this region of the state.
Yeah, exactly. And as I mentioned earlier, a reverse osmosis project or some kind of project where you have to pipe water long distances from somewhere else, I mean, those are hundreds of millions of dollars. Mm-hmm. They are, and you have to bond to build them. So you're immediately getting hit with, this is something we have to do. I mean, you can't wait around for water, right?
Who's bonding it? Is it the utilities?
Well, so it's bonded. The utility would bond it, or a co-op, or something like some organization like that. It could be the cities. And we have talked about Lake County forming a co-op with, and particularly in South Lake County, a water cooperative, mostly to address existing opportunities for alternative water supply, like conservation through landscaping and stormwater harvesting, which is easy things we can do now, easier relatively. But what happens is, again, if this isn't done, then somebody in the future, a co-op or the cities themselves, the county and the cities, the water utility, they have to bond to build something that's hundreds of millions of dollars, and of course we get hit paying for that.
Get hit, we being the
residents.
The residents.
And the businesses. I mean, our cost of water will go up 10 times.
Our water bills.
Our water bills, yeah, quite frankly, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So not conserving water, not implementing water conservation landscape ordinances is a form of taxation. Because you're just leading to the inevitable increase in our utility bills as a result of the need to build these alternative water source projects. And I think that's the message we need to get to the commissioners and to the voters is, this is not about somebody's preference for native plants because somebody has, prefers this design or style of landscaping. No, this is about water, and it's about infrastructure and utilities, and it's about the cost that is going to be incurred by the citizens if we have to build this alternative water infrastructure.
That's right. Yeah, and the term that we've heard in opposition is, I don't like government intrusion. Well, you and I have talked many years. We don't like government intrusion either. But there's also a role for management of the resource, which is a very conservative principle, so that you're protecting it for future generations, so they're not stuck paying for it. So what is more conservative, I would argue, to your point, is to conserve now and to protect that and plan for it, instead of sticking it just to my kids down the road, or even, you know, the next generation through these costs. So I agree. It's actually very conservative, and this is, you know, I'd argue for my conservative friends and Republicans, this is a very conservative topic.
It is an extremely conservative topic, and you're starting to sound an awful lot like Teddy Roosevelt.
Yes, who was one of my favorites, as you know.
I do, and I was doing a little research on Teddy because I know how much you're a fan, and I'm also a fan. But he speaks in very similar ways about the wise use of resources. You know, that we need to invest in our natural resources for future generations. Mm-hmm. And I believe he was a Republican.
He was, yeah, very much so, yeah. And he is one I use often. You know, he actually went so far as to say, as you know, it's a matter of national defense, you know, to protect the forest, to protect the water, because we need that to preserve our American identity. And you know, what's more conservative than that? I couldn't agree more. It is a matter of the next generation, and it's you know, there's a moral aspect to it as well, and I'm careful about this, but you know, this is a moral issue too. And you know, I'm a person of faith, so I always tell people it's very in line with you know, our belief as Christians to be good stewards of the land for the next generation. I mean, that's throughout the Bible. And here we are, you know, we have a chance to do this. We need to be just stepping outside of our comfort zone a little bit. Just think about it a little bit more, like what we're talking about the effects to the next generation. And I think most people will arrive where we're at, and that, yeah, this is something we need to do.
Yeah, it's important to think about future generations. And it's important to think about the environment in terms of our responsibility. I agree. You know, it is a moral issue as well as a scientific one and a political one. And it's ultimately, I believe, to be the most important issue of our generation and of this place in time. Here in Florida, even more specifically here in Lake County, we are facing tremendous pressures with all of this growth. We have some of the most outstanding natural resources in the world right here in Lake County. It truly is an incredible place. But all of this is truly in peril in a way that I can't overstate, because again, you know, I see how fast it happens. You go out to Sugarloaf Mountain.
Yeah. It's a good example.
It's a very good example. Sugarloaf Mountain is the highest spot in Florida south of the Panhandle. And you know, cyclists know it because that's the hardest that's the hardest road to cycle.
It is. They come from all around because they know how hard it is.
They come from all over the state to cycle around these roads. But unfortunately, you know, I think that whole landscape is going to be transformed in the next few years, because you've got two very large developments that are going in, and it's just like that. It's gone, you know, and you'll bump into people next year who'll be coming to Lake County to ride Sugarloaf Mountain, and they'll be like, "What happened? I was just here 3 years ago."
Right.
And it's gone.
Exactly. You know, they'll be surprised.
And they'll be surprised.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't bring all these people into Lake County. Of course, we should invite people to come and share this beautiful space and place with us. But if we don't take care to do it with intention and with an eye towards protecting our natural resources for future generations, we're going to make a lot of mistakes. But I think you can do both, and that's smart and sustainable growth, smart and sustainable development.
Right.
And the Wellness Way landscape ordinance is a great example of that. It's not gonna burden the home builders and the home buyers. It's not gonna drive up the cost of living. Absolutely not. It's not necessarily more expensive. It's just different.
And it's probably going to save them a lot of money in the long run, because I can only imagine what a water bill will be for somebody that's trying to water in wellness way, a half acre or third acre lot that's all St. Augustine. It's a matter of strapping somebody with water bills for the next 20 years that could be so much higher than what they are.
And they'll keep on increasing. The water bills are going up all over the state, because now utilities are having to charge for water in a more aggressive way. It won't be surprising to me to see people with $250, $400 a month water bills.
Exactly. No, and I mean that's what we want to avoid.
That's what we want to avoid. And when you think about maybe a reasonable water bill today, people might be expecting to pay $50. Mm-hmm. So that's a $450 a month additional cost that a family has to bear because somebody put in a landscaping that was inappropriate for the region.
That's right.
That's just a water bill. If you also look at your maintenance costs and your fertilization costs, we've done a lot of cost analyses on these types of landscape practices, as you know, because people will say, well, you're putting in place a change to your land development ordinances that is onerous and that's going to increase costs. Well, that's absolutely false. Not only does it not increase costs up front for the new build, it will save the residents significantly over time with the water bills and the landscape maintenance costs and fertilization costs. So these practices are smart. You know, when you start working with nature and you start thinking about holistically how to build in a way that is more harmonious with your natural environment, you start realizing that there's all kinds of solutions that are elegant, that are simple, that are simply better, and they don't cost more.
Exactly, and the simplification and the effect of your everyday life, I think, is lost on people, and you just touched on that. There's a lot of beauty in that with these newer landscapes, to just saving time in itself. So you're spot on.
Yeah, but change is difficult, and I know there's going to be opposition to this, but that's why it's great to have you there, because I know that you're gonna speak eloquently and you're gonna defend the ordinance, and I'll do my best to encourage people to come out to the hearing. And just like we were successful with the referendum, I'm confident we're going to be successful with this ordinance.
I think so too. And again, you coming out, and a lot of others now are starting to hear about this, are getting engaged. I think we'll be able to get it done. And you to a point you made earlier, we are at a crossroads in Lake County where we've got all this growth that's coming, and to get these changes to the built environment, because there's still going to be people building here, there's still going to be moving, and there's nothing that that Tim or Sean could do to just all of a sudden say, you're not
build a wall.
Yeah, that's it. There's nothing that we could do, or if every elected city official and county official said no, and I get the question too about the moratorium, it's still not possible, because there's so many areas that have entitlements.
There's got to be 30,000-40,000 units permitted and unbuilt.
Oh yeah.
Maybe more.
And a lot of the growth, even some of the developments that people are seeing now were approved in that 2002 to 2006 timeframe. Yeah. But only now are they finally coming through and building those. So
you obviously can't take away people's entitlements, because that's their property rights, and I agree with that as well. But you can change the land development codes and ordinances to ensure that when those units get built, they're built in a manner that is mindful of the needs of the community and our natural resources, right? That's
totally. That's the idea. To go to a higher bar, because we're Florida. Everybody wants to come here, and we should start asking for a higher standard of a development. We're not the 50s, 60s, 70s, or 80s of Florida anymore. There's so many people here. There's millions of people here, way more than it ever was, even when the Growth Management Act was first passed in the mid '80s. There's so many millions more people here that we have to do this. It's just to accommodate people that are here. You have to have a different standard. Not only should it be landscaping, I will add, but it should be things like internal rate of capture, planning these communities better so that people are taking less trips, fewer trips. Now, I'm not advocating for people to give up their cars, trucks, motorcycles, vehicles. That's a part of our culture, and it will be, and it should be. But we also got to think about shortening the trips, taking fewer trips, because that's a big part of the traffic problem right now. You got to drive everywhere for everything. There are longer trips. People are driving longer trips to work into other counties. So the planning is not only with landscape codes and better development, but reducing those trips, getting the traffic off the road. And by the way, as I mentioned earlier with traffic, a problem particularly for South Lake is you have 27 and 50, which are major highway systems, roads through Lake County. 20% of the traffic is from trucks alone. So 20%, think about that, is just from semi-traffic trailer traffic. And then when you have the turnpike being worked on the way it is and being widened, 5-6 times a week, the traffic is being diverted off of that road onto Highway 27. Highway 50, same thing, the other direction. So we're getting a lot of that traffic, and that's a big part of it, is that other traffic that you've heard me mention. But to what you just said, we also have to think about our community here and start making those trips a little bit shorter, a little more local, or even a little bit less at times. And you do that through better planning, mixed use, little village cores. You can run down, instead of driving 15 to 20 minutes, maybe you drive in only 5 minutes, or walking. Imagine that, being able to walk somewhere to get what you need, to go to a coffee shop, to go to a pub or whatever. Those are what we need to think about. And by the way, our kids, that's what they're thinking about. They're thinking about that stuff. So it may not be necessarily with somebody that's retired from up north, but our kids, the next generation, and this common theme in our discussion today is about thinking about the next generation. I mean, that's what they're looking for, and I think it's good, quite honestly. I like that. So that's a part of it as well. And I know it's a little bit of a tangent we took from water resources and natural resources protection, but in a way it does all sort of fit together.
It all connects.
Yeah.
It's important to think holistically about how to create healthier communities. And that includes traffic, includes the amount of time we spend in cars, amount of exposure we have to the pollution that comes from roads and cars, and how these roadways cut up our natural lands and create barriers to wildlife and to things that are important to the community. So I think it is all related, but we have to have an awareness that we need to raise the bar, raise the standard for development, and make sure that the growth that is coming to this region is quality growth that is going to have the least amount of negative impact. When you take it and you think about the issues and you look at the science and you look at the broader implications of growth for the region, for our quality of life, and for future generations, you can quickly connect the dots and say, okay, no, this is just part of the need to raise the bar. This is just part of the need for us to do better for future generations and make sure that when we bring in 20,000 new homes, we're not going to completely destroy the water resources and scar the landscape in a way that's irreversible.
Correct.
So once you build it, you can't really.
That's true.
It's very, very difficult to correct it.
Yeah, no, there's not many cases where they're turning urban lands back into rural areas. I mean, we talk about that with farmlands. It's once you lose a farmland that's got good arable soil, it's gone forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's another issue you're really keen on here in Lake County is the preservation of agricultural lands.
Yeah.
So what are some of your thoughts on that? Why are agricultural lands important? Where are we at today with ag lands in Lake County, and what can be done?
Yeah, well, ag lands, of course, I'll go back to the Teddy Roosevelt emphasis and quote on it's a matter of national defense. Our food source is basic to us, right? I mean, we have to have food to live, and it's a matter of survival and prosperity. And what I see is happening, and I am not an expert in the agricultural world and economy, I will make that clear, but obviously the rising cost of food and the use of a smaller but larger group of corporations controlling that, and how we counter that in a sense here locally is by encouraging our lands that are agricultural to stay agricultural, and encouraging those that are interested, even the new generation that wants to get into agriculture, to be able to do it and actually do it in a way that's where they can thrive at it. So it's a matter of the having a good food source for us, sustainability, national defense, if you will, a good economy. But it's also in our history, it's in our roots. I mean, the citrus that I mentioned earlier, the cattle lands that Lake County used to be known for as well. Now it's blueberries and a whole host of other fruit crops, I think, that are doing well here in Lake County. But it's honoring our history, but it's also economic. It's also an economic issue, to be quite frank. And I think it's important that we do everything we can to foster that through supporting applicants, for instance, to go through the Rural and Family Lands Protection Act, which is a very big, important program in Florida right now. We have some farmlands in Lake County that I think are great, and we need to make sure that they're preserved in perpetuity through that program or through transfer development rights is something that I hope that we can achieve. Being somebody that has a history in agriculture in Lake County, being able to sell the development rights on their property, have some economic gain, keep the property in agriculture forever or for 100 years or whatever is written into the easement, and having that density transferred somewhere else where it actually makes sense to have a little higher density.
Is that currently in place, transfer development rights?
We don't really have it in place in Lake County. There's a program that works over Wekiva. It's in place for Wekiva, but it hasn't really been used often. And TDRs is a great tool to protect, could be a great tool. It's an incentive, first of all. It's not a required, but it could be something that's very useful for us in Lake County to protect agricultural lands. I think there's those that in agriculture that would I know would be willing to take advantage of that. You probably know something. You run in those circles. What's important to know is that we got to do it right. We kind of only have one shot at it, because not a lot of people it's tying the environment with economics. We talked about this earlier, so it has to be done right. It has to be a good incentive, and everybody has to follow the rules. The cities and the counties have to follow the rules on it, or it won't work. So we're in the process right now in Lake County working with some experts. We're being deliberate and thoughtful, because when we launch it, we want it to work. We want people to take advantage of it.
I do see how it could be really helpful if you give a farmer who owns his land, is happily farming his land, but realizes that the value of the land has increased considerably over the past 20 or 40 or 100 years that his family may have been farming that land because of all the growth and the change in the land values due to population growth in the county. You need to be able to provide that farmer with an opportunity.
That's right.
To harvest the value of that land appreciation without necessarily selling his land to development. And so that they can keep on farming.
That's right.
Because what happens is that, you know, the parents retire, the farm passes on to the kids. The kids may not be as passionate about farming as the parents were.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're seeing that the land has got this incredible value. It's very tempting to sell the farm rather than have to wake up every morning and, you know, do the farm work. You could just sell the land.
Exactly. Yeah, and go live on the beach somewhere.
And go live on the beach. So,
yeah.
You know, that's kind of the way the incentives work. But if you had a transfer development right program, then they could sell the development rights and, you know, keep on farming. But I think in order for that to work, to me, you have to stop increasing entitlements in the cities and the county.
You're right.
Like you said, we've already given out enough entitlements.
That's right.
Maybe they're in the wrong place. Mm-hmm. So,
exactly.
You know, this guy who's got a farm has all these entitlements. Mm-hmm. That he doesn't really need or want to use at the moment. And then this person over here who has a property that's perfect for a high density development has low density entitlements.
That's right. Yeah.
So that's where the transfer would occur. It seems to me you could have a trade, and that would work. But it's good to be thinking outside of the box because ag lands in Lake County are, you know, not what they used to be. It's been a rapid decline.
That's right. No, we've lost a lot of agricultural lands in Lake County. I mean, as you know, and that's going to be the key, is to have a whole, you know, host of options for these landowners to be able to stay in agriculture. That's just one of them.
Or to grow. Let me give you another example. Like we've been looking for land in Lake County for about 400 acres of citrus under protected screen, which we really believe in, and we really think that Lake County is the best place to do this because we have the best soils for growing citrus, and we're inland, we're a little bit protected from hurricanes. So you would think that's great. We're going to make a big investment. You know, we're going to spend tens of millions of dollars on this new farm. So we're looking for land, and it's impossible to find. Because either all of the good land in Lake County that's high and dry that would be useful for citrus, that's that size, has already been purchased by developers.
Exactly.
Or the landowners know, well, this is going to be attractive to a developer, and so the prices are out of reach. They're like, you know, $50,000 to $80,000 an acre.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. So you can't justify a farm on land that's $50,000 to $80,000 an acre.
Costs are way too high.
Just even $40,000 an acre, it's too high. Okay, but if there was a transfer development rights program, what we could do is we can identify a piece of land, we could purchase it, and then we could sell the development rights for, say, whatever, $20,000, $30,000, and then we'd end up with a piece of land that we have, you know, $10,000, $15,000 an acre in, which works for farming.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So the economics is tough because we've lost a lot of farming in Lake County. Now that, you know, there's companies like ours that want to bring farming back and expand in Lake County, we can't find land at the right price because the only option for a landowner is to sell their land to developers.
Yeah, and we're seeing that. We're seeing that in cases all around Lake County, unfortunately.
Yeah. But the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program is good because the state will buy an easement. Yeah,
it's very good. It's a great program. Of course, you and I have worked with our Commissioner of Agriculture, Wilton Simpson. You know, I think he's been here even to your headquarters here. And he runs a great program, and I think it should be supported more. And I think there's more, you know, there's a lot of applicants on that list, and it's my hope that we can continue to support those and get all applicants on the list, eventually supported. I think the way to do that is if you're in a county that is innovative and at least willing to think creative, you might have a better shot. You have a TDRs, maybe you match what comes through with the Rural and Family Lands Protection Act grant award. you match it with TDRs, maybe even some easement money from public lands. You start putting all that together, and the ledger gets the amount down that's palatable or good for the landowner, and then the landowner, the person in agricultural, gets a benefit from it, and then we, the citizens, get the benefit of knowing that that's going to be kept in agriculture instead of popping up houses.
Yeah. It's going to take all of these things.
It's going to take all those options together.
All of these,
exactly.
These approaches, and that's why I think it's great that you're leading the way in Lake County. You got the referendum done. You're working on the TDRs. You're involved heavily with the Rural and Family Lands Protection Program to make sure that we can bring this money to the county. And it's important. I don't think we can overstate that either, because once those lands go into development, they're lost to conservation, they're lost to agriculture. Mm-hmm. And agriculture, just the same as conservation lands, in most cases, is providing the same ecosystem services in terms of water recharge and air quality and water quality.
Exactly.
So, those goes back to our earlier discussion of, the implication of losing those lands will eventually come back in the form of higher taxes and more infrastructure cost.
Exactly.
For the county, and then a degraded environment, which undermines the whole premise, the whole basis for why people moved here in the first place.
Yeah, and one of our favorite organizations of all time, the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation, as they say, ag lands are corridor compatible, and we've talked about that, but that goes to what you just said. Our lands are ag lands are corridor compatible. Wildlife moves through farmlands as well. And that open space, that buffer between urbanization and pollution and then the environment is very important. And that's what those buffers, that's another aspect to what the ag lands provide. So,
yeah. It's all connected. So we have to think in terms of planning, conservation, agriculture, and then sustainable development on the part of the lands that we're going to develop. And it's still a struggle throughout the state and in Lake County to get people to think about why we need to do this for future generations and why we need to make some changes to our policies and ordinances. But one thing that was really encouraging to me was when we were preparing for the referendum, working with the Trust for Public Lands, they did a poll. What came out of that polling was that there was a very, very high concern for water.
That's right.
Water quality and overdevelopment or rampant growth.
That's right. Yeah, if you remember, we were surprised a little bit because some of the obvious choices are when you do these polls, and I've done a lot of, either participated in or done myself some polling, paid for it at least. The number one issue a lot of times that you think is, crime, public safety, and it is. And so this is, my comments will not diminish any of that. That's still always way up on the list for people. But this time, sort of the number one local issue was exactly what you just said from this polling. It was the loss of open space, water resources. Water was extremely high, water protection, and then I know traffic was a part of that as well. But so right at the very tip top of the list was exactly what you just said. It was a little bit of a surprise. As I told our sheriff at the time, I think that's a good thing. It means you're doing a great job. People feel like it's just the growth right now is a big issue. But so it's a little bit surprising, but now it's not surprising. I mean, we know that's on everybody's mind.
Yeah, and I wonder, if we're surprised, maybe it means that these policies that we've been discussing are a lot more approachable and amenable to the general public than we realize. Maybe there's more of an agreement out there on this than our public officials realize.
I think so. I mean, that's another great point. You'll have sort of this, what do they call it, like a discursive agreement, where you get people from, you would think that, one group of people over here, it could be, far right conservative people, another group over here, very liberal, maybe somebody that's from a different state, scientists, and just different groups and different demographics all have different, some different take on it. But I think, to your point, we're finding out that there's actually agreement sort of right there among 90% of the people, that this is super important. Especially
Hunters
right
and hippies agree.
Exactly.
Clean water and natural lands.
Hunters, hippies, scientists, yuppies, all of them. Everybody's all on the same page.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing, right? But yeah, I think in this day and age, with the division, it goes to show that maybe there is a lot more commonality there.
I think there is, and I'm starting to wonder if we need to be focusing on educating our elected officials more than the general public, because maybe there's just a disconnect where the elected officials are still, kind of catching up to the trend, thinking that people want no overreach, or they want no taxation, or they want accountability in government, or they want all of these things that perhaps are important, but maybe not as important as clean water, natural lands, protecting our quality of life for future generations, making sure that all of this growth doesn't tear us apart. Because it's still a struggle, whether it's in the cities or at the county, to get good policy approved. It's always a battle. Like, I think this ordinance is going to be a battle.
I agree, and I think you're on to something. I think there's there's certainly a education process, and the policy making cycle, if you will, always involves special interest, and special interest doesn't necessarily have to be a bad word. So I say that, but so special interest. People that put a lot of money into the system, and yes, there's a lot of influence there. But if you're only hearing that one side, if you're an elected official and you're only hearing from that one side, of course you're not going to make an informed decision. You're going to make an informed decision the way they think that group thinks you should. But by listening and participating and being a little educated more on the broader aspect, I think you're right. I think us elected officials could make better policy choices.
If you could wave a magic wand and implement one policy change in the state of Florida, what would it be?
Oh, wow. I would, in the state of Florida, right now, so I might be a little bit biased, if you will, caught up, or maybe a better way to describe it is caught up in the current situation. But I would like to have a little more leeway, a little less preemption, from the state, as far as allowing us to move forward with some of these growth management protections. So when the state comes in, and I understand the role, so I always say this with all respect. I love our legislators. They've got a very tough job, but allow us here locally as a political subdivision or corporation, being the cities, or a political subdivision being the county of the state, allow us to make these decisions here that are good for the future, and that will be less of a problem for you in Tallahassee. Just let us do it. I'm willing to go into a zoning hearing all day and get yelled at and things like that and make the tough decisions. But I just need to have the tools, and I don't need to be hopefully not preempted on being able to make some tough choices, the right choices for the county. So if I could wave a magic wand, I'd want a little less preemption, I guess, is what I'm trying to say, particularly when it comes to growth management. I understand that the cross-county intercommerce and not affecting that, and some of the rules that are in place. Certainly that's understandable, and why you have to preempt some things at the state level. But right now, I think the big issue, if I could wave the magic wand, I'd want a little less preemption.
Well, yeah, that's probably a good thing to wave the wand at, because it's gotten a little bit crazy. Every year there's more and more preemption. I mean, didn't they preempt the county's abilities to do fertilizer bans, for example?
They did. They did at one time. They have. They've made it pretty tough. Fortunately, I think in Lake County we had enacted our fertilizer ordinance before that.
Before that, but still, they're saying
yes,
like,
now
we know
correct.
better than you do in terms of how to protect your waters.
Yes.
It's something it seems as minor in the big picture of like government. Fertilizer bans, they're telling you, no, we're not going to let you make that decision.
That's right. Yeah.
And then this was it Senate Bill 180.
Yeah, Senate Bill 180 is going to be problematic for us. So that's certainly you'll want to, as you continue to do these podcasts, update the listeners on how that plays out. I think it could be amended in my discussions with some legislators about it being amended this summer, maybe going into the fall as well. So we hopefully that'll be amended. A lot of good parts of that bill, but the very damaging part of that bill is prohibiting any city or county from doing any further changes to comp plan and county codes or city codes based off of disasters that have occurred. So,
and for how many years?
Well, it's retroactive back to Milton, Hurricane Milton, and it's essentially if you're ever within
100 miles of hurricane winds.
Yeah, it's for a full another year after that. So what happens in Florida is we're constantly getting hit with hurricanes or storms. So that in theory, it's probably every year that it's going to occur. Meaning
you can't change your comprehensive plan.
You won't be able to ever change. Yeah. That's the concern, or is clarifying that too.
It includes land development ordinances.
It would be land development ordinances, exactly. Yeah,
so any of the things we just spent an hour and a half talking about, trying to
could be nullified.
Raise the bar to ensure that we have smart, sustainable growth, so that these entitlements don't destroy our quality of life. Yeah. That would be made impossible by something like Senate Bill 180.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Now, if you gave me maybe two magic wands, I would say that, but then I'd also say the funding, obviously, more funding for green infrastructure. So I don't like the scary sometimes messages we get about, well, Florida Forever may be cut, or Florida Wildlife Corridor. Those are good monies that the state spends for the Floridians in general. So I think in those two aspects, I know I'm only supposed to answer one, but two, I would say as important is funding those programs, but maybe fund them more to keep green infrastructure funded, like we do our roads. And I would say our roads are underfunded at the state level. I wish DOT is great to work with, by the way, but they have needs. But we also have needs when it comes to funding the green infrastructure. So I'd like to see more funding go towards that as well.
Okay, less preemption,
less
more
preemption,
money
and more green infrastructure. That's to sum it up best.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, what is your hope for Lake County? What is Lake County at its best in 20 years? What does it look like?
Yeah, I think really the sort of the qualitative, maybe vague answer I give to that is a mark of success is those that have moved here maybe in the last 20 years, or maybe maybe their third or fourth generation, or maybe they have just moved within 5 years. The mark of success will be one, they've chosen to stay here. Maybe they're now raising kids, they're staying here because of everything that we've talked about holistically here. They're able to have a good job and not have to drive 2 hours somewhere else. They're able to go out and run the trail like I do on a lot of Saturdays, or they're able to. They love going, to kayaking on the Blueways in Lake County. So the ideal situation for me is generation after generation now calls Lake County home. Obviously, I'd like to see the population, the stabilize a little bit in the sense of the growth coming in, and it not be so fast and frantic like it is now. but also when we're driving between these cities, for instance, driving between Mineola and Howie in the Hills. Well, I know, a good mark of success will be I can tell the difference between driving between Mineola and Howie in the Hills. I go through Mineola, and then I see, a green belt, open space, and then I come into Howie. It has a different identity, a different look. Unlike other places around Florida, I'll just say some counties in South Florida where you don't know what city you're in sometimes. It's just all urban mass. So I think 20 years from now, that'll be a mark of success, is there's an identity between the cities, there's a difference, and you can go through and see very rural areas. You see sustainable agriculture, good agriculture in the county, as well as, now generations after generation saying, Lake County's my home. I'm staying here.
It's a good vision. It's going to be a challenge.
It is, yeah.
It's going to take a lot of good policy, and it's going to take a lot of communication to overcome the belly aching and the resistance to change. It feels like the thrust of the momentum is to just pave it all over, to make it all the same. I'm not sure you can tell the difference driving from Claremont to Mineola right now.
Honestly, no. There's a lot of, it's hard to tell. There's been people who will even tell you, I don't know, I'm not even sure where I live.
Yeah, which city is this? But on the other hand, you can still see the difference between Mineola and Howie in the Hills. So there is something left to protect.
Or Montverde,
or
with the Ferndale protection area. Yeah.
There's still a lot to protect in Lake County, despite what maybe we've lost or haven't been successful in protecting over the past 20 years.
Right.
So we had the benefit of being able to look at, okay, that's already happened, and most people agreed they don't want to see more of that. Mm-hmm. That was overwhelmingly what they were saying in those polls.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you can look over here and you can see you still have these amazing, resources. You still have the lakes and the rivers and the springs and the wetlands and the woodlands and the hills and the swamps, and you can see that that's still there and that it deserves to be protected. And in the middle is you and your colleagues, who are our elected officials, who are voting on these very important decisions every single day. I don't know how you do it. It's like this landscape ordinance to me seems like super critical and very important.
It is. It's very strategic. Yeah.
But exactly. You have votes like this of equal importance almost every week.
There's a lot of important votes that come up. Yeah, absolutely. But I enjoy what I do and really put my heart into it. But people like you are why I do it. To be honest, I mean, you're behind me and behind all of us, not just me. You're behind other elected officials too that want to do the right thing, and that's how we get it done.
Yeah. Well, it's a real pleasure to work alongside you. You get a lot of things done in local government, and you have the right values and morals and ethics, and so that makes it a joy to, ask Sean, hey, what's important? What do we need to be working on? And I'll go to battle with you any day of the week.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I wouldn't want to have anybody else. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for being here.